Haiti wasn't always Haiti. It was once the wealthiest colony on earth, a paradise of sugar, coffee, and staggering fortune. But that fortune was drenched in blood. On the plantations of Saint-Domingue, over 500,000 enslaved Africans toiled beneath whips, shackled to an empire that viewed them as machinery, not human beings. Then something extraordinary occurred. They rose. They didn't merely rebel. They organized. They strategized. They rewrote the entire narrative of the Atlantic world. Facing down French, Spanish, and British empires, they proclaimed something unprecedented in human history, a republic founded by formerly enslaved people. Haiti became the first black-led nation born from the ashes of slavery, and it has paid a crushing price for that defiance ever since. This is the story of how Haiti transformed the world and how the world has never truly forgiven it for doing so. Let's journey back to the beginning, before the uprising, before the inferno. The Pearl of the Caribbean. Long before the Haitian Revolution set the world ablaze, the land we now call Haiti was home to a people who had no interest in empires or rebellions. The Taíno, the island's indigenous inhabitants, named it Haiti, land of towering mountains. They flourished in sophisticated societies, growing cassava and sweet potatoes, gliding along rivers in dugout canoes, and thriving under a decentralized yet organized system of tribal chiefs known as caciques. But in 1492, everything shattered. Christopher Columbus arrived, drove a flag into the earth, and claimed the island for Spain. He christened it La Isla Española, later Hispaniola. From that devastating moment forward, the island's destiny would be dictated not by its people, but by those who came to exploit them. Within mere decades, the indigenous population, estimated at several 100,000, had been virtually annihilated by warfare, brutal forced labor, and European diseases. The Spanish imported African slavery to replace the vanishing workforce. Over the next 300 years, more than 12.5 million Africans would be transported across the Atlantic in chains. Nearly 500,000 of them would arrive in the colony of Saint-Domingue on the western third of Hispaniola, what would eventually become Haiti. By the early 18th century, France had seized control of Saint-Domingue, and it rapidly became the crown jewel of French colonial ambitions. The colony was a money-printing machine. It produced 40% of Europe's sugar and over half its coffee. Wealth flooded into French treasuries. But that wealth demanded a horrifying price. Saint-Domingue was constructed on savagery. Slavery there ranked among the cruelest anywhere in the world. Enslaved people were literally worked to death. The average life expectancy for an enslaved person in the colony was a mere 21 years. Plantation owners frequently calculated it cheaper to purchase new slaves than to maintain the ones they already possessed. The social hierarchy of Saint-Domingue was a ticking time bomb. At the pinnacle stood the Grand Blancs, affluent white plantation magnates. Below them were the Petits Blancs, impoverished or working-class whites who often despised the elite but clung desperately to racial privilege. Then came the gens de couleur libres-free people of color, many highly educated, property-owning, and in some instances, even slaveholders themselves. They possessed wealth but were systematically denied equal rights because of their skin. And at the absolute bottom were the enslaved Africans, the overwhelming majority of the population. By 1789, Saint-Domingue counted a population of roughly 500,000 enslaved people, compared to merely 32,000 whites and 28,000 free people of color. Among the enslaved were survivors of powerful African kingdoms like Congo, Dahomey, and Yorubaland. Some had been warriors, some were spiritual leaders. Many carried with them the sacred rhythms of Vodou, the spiritual traditions rooted in African heritage and transformed in the Americas. These traditions would later become a crucial lifeline of resistance, but there was something else brewing: memory. Enslaved people remembered freedom. They hadn't forgotten their true identities. and they observed carefully as a radical new concept reached their shores: revolution. In 1789, across the Atlantic, France erupted into chaos. The French Revolution exploded with passionate cries of liberty, equality, and fraternity. News traveled swiftly, carried by sailors, merchants, and whispers. Free people of color in Saint-Domingue demanded their rights. White planters craved greater control. The enslaved people, they watched, they waited. Then, on the night of August 21, 1791, it erupted. In the northern plains, near Bois Cayman, enslaved Africans assembled for a Vodou ceremony led by a priest named Dutty Bachman. There, under the cover of darkness, they forged a sacred pact. They would rise. They would fight. They would incinerate the entire system. That night, the plantations blazed with flames. The Haitian Revolution had ignited. Fire in the cane fields. When the fires illuminated the sky in August 1791, Saint-Domingue quaked with terror. This wasn't some minor rebellion. It was a coordinated uprising that swept across the northern plains. Sugar plantations burned to ash. Coffee fields were engulfed in flames. Within weeks, over 1,000 plantations lay in ruins. The revolution had erupted, and it wasn't retreating. At the heart of it all stood formidable leaders. The most legendary was Toussaint Louverture, but others initially spearheaded the assault. Dutty Bachman, the Vodou priest who helped ignite the rebellion, was killed in the early fighting, but the spirit he unleashed surged onward like wildfire. Jean-Francois Papillon, Georges Biassou, and Jean-Jacques commanded different factions of the enslaved in fierce, occasionally ruthless, campaigns. They weren't merely trying to survive, they were determined to triumph. Initially, France was paralyzed with shock. The colony was far too valuable to abandon and far too chaotic to control. The white planters pleaded desperately for military assistance. France dispatched soldiers, but the nation was still consumed by its own revolution, and the National Assembly in Paris couldn't decide how to handle a colony overflowing with enslaved people battling for liberation. Then emerged Toussaint. Born into slavery around 1743, Toussaint Louverture had worked as a coachman, became literate, maintained strict discipline, and studied Enlightenment philosophy voraciously. He had been freed by his master years earlier, but remained connected to the plantation system, cultivating his reputation and earning widespread respect. When the revolution detonated, he stepped into the turmoil and within a year emerged as a strategic mastermind. He joined the rebels in 1791 and immediately demonstrated an exceptional talent for organization, diplomacy, and military tactics. Toussaint initially aligned himself with the Spanish, who controlled the eastern portion of Hispaniola, now the Dominican Republic, and were at war with France. The Spanish promised freedom to any enslaved people who fought for their cause. Thousands eagerly joined. By 1793, Toussaint had risen to general. His troops, many of whom had never received formal military training, were defeating professional European armies with stunning regularity. He constructed supply chains, trained officers, enforced iron discipline, and most critically, offered something genuinely revolutionary, a bold new vision for a free black society. Meanwhile, chaos consumed everything. In France, the Jacobins had seized power. They abolished slavery throughout the colonies in 1794. Toussaint switched allegiances again, this time joining the French Republic. With slavery legally abolished, he now fought beneath the tricolor flag, driving out both the Spanish and British forces from Saint-Domingue. But not all former rebels supported him. André Rigaud, a leader of the free people of color in the South, fiercely resisted Toussaint's expanding power. The two factions clashed in a brutal civil war known as the War of the Knives. It wasn't simply about race. It was about class, control, and competing visions for the future. Toussaint prevailed. By 1801, Toussaint controlled all of Saint-Domingue. He invaded the Spanish-controlled Eastern Territory, abolished slavery there immediately, and effectively ruled the entire island. He even drafted a constitution that proclaimed him governor for life and outlawed slavery permanently. He never officially declared independence, but he governed like a sovereign ruler. France certainly took notice. Enter Napoleon Bonaparte. Now First Consul of France, Napoleon hungered to restore the empire and the astronomical profits of Saint-Domingue. He dispatched his brother-in-law, General Charles Leclerc, with over 30,000 troops to recapture the colony, reinstate slavery, and eliminate Toussaint. It was the largest overseas military expedition in French history at that point. Initially, Toussaint attempted negotiation, but inevitably, war exploded. The fighting was absolutely brutal. Entire towns were burned to rubble. Executions became commonplace. Toussaint was betrayed, captured under the deceptive promise of peace talks, and shipped to France in chains. He perished in a French prison in 1803, in the freezing Alps, far from the land he had liberated. His final words were hauntingly prophetic. "In overthrowing me, you have cut down in Saint-Domingue only the trunk of the tree of liberty. It will spring up again by the roots, for they are numerous and deep." He was absolutely right, because rising in Toussaint's place came a new leader, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Independence or death. If Toussaint was the philosopher general, Dessalines was the sledgehammer. Born enslaved, forged in battle, and utterly uncompromising in his vision, Dessalines seized the reins of the revolution after Toussaint's capture. He'd fought alongside him, bled beside him, and now swore to complete the mission. Napoleon had already reinstated slavery in other French colonies. The revolutionaries in Saint-Domingue understood precisely what that signaled. There could be no return to French domination, no return to bondage. It was independence or death, nothing in between. Dessalines unified the scattered rebel forces into a formidable army, and then he unleashed absolute fury. The Haitian army pushed back Napoleon's forces in a devastating scorched earth campaign. Yellow fever played its horrific role. Over half the French troops died from disease, including General Leclerc himself. But it was Haitian military tactics that ultimately sealed France's defeat. Guerrilla warfare, lightning ambushes, severed supply lines. The rebels knew every inch of terrain. The French did not. By late 1803, the French were in full retreat. On November 18th, the final battle at Vertières ended with a decisive Haitian victory. On January 1st, 1804, Dessalines proclaimed independence before the world. The world's first black republic was born. The country would now be called Haiti, reclaiming the ancient Taíno name that had been erased for centuries. Dessalines made his message crystal clear. Haiti would be forever free. No empire, no chains, no plantations ever again. And with that thunderous declaration, the world fundamentally changed. But the world didn't celebrate. The United States, still deeply entrenched in slaveholding, refused to recognize Haiti's existence. European powers imposed suffocating economic isolation. In 1825, France demanded reparations, not from France to Haiti for centuries of slavery and brutality, but the reverse. Haiti was forced to pay 150 million francs to compensate former slaveholders for their losses. The crushing debt crippled the economy for over a century. Still, Haiti survived. The early years were extraordinarily difficult. Dessalines was assassinated in 1806. The country briefly fractured into rival governments. But the people, many of whom had been enslaved only a decade earlier, held firm. They had no models to follow, no international allies, no instruction manual, but they possessed freedom. One lesser-known story. In 1862, during the American Civil War, the United States finally recognized Haiti. Black Americans like Frederick Douglass praised Haiti as a shining beacon. In his powerful words, "No other land has darker or deeper wrongs than Haiti, none has brighter or nobler triumphs." Haiti had defied impossible odds. But the world would never forget or forgive that it had dared to challenge the established order. Legacy, struggle, and strength. The Haitian Revolution wasn't merely a victory for one small island. It was a revolution of all revolutions. It demolished myths. It proved conclusively that enslaved people could topple empires, construct nations, and define freedom entirely on their own terms. It ignited rebellions throughout Cuba, Jamaica, and the American South. It terrified slaveholders and electrified abolitionists worldwide. But it came at a staggering price. Haiti was systematically punished for its audacious success. The debt to France wasn't fully paid until 1947. The United States occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934, installing puppet leaders and controlling its economy with an iron fist. Natural catastrophes, political instability, and relentless foreign intervention extracted their toll. And yet Haiti endures. It boldly declared war against Nazi Germany in World War II. It helped liberate Latin American nations by supporting Simon Bolivar in the Fale 1810s. It sparked movements for racial justice across entire continents. Haiti also gifted the world its vibrant culture. Vodou, widely misunderstood but magnificently alive, and compa music, pulsing with rhythm and resilience. Not to mention the Creole language, which was born from survival and breathtaking creativity. And a spirit that absolutely refuses to die. There are struggles still grinding poverty, corruption, devastating natural disasters. Earthquakes in 2010 and 2021 killed hundreds of thousands. Political instability has repeatedly shaken the nation to its core. But in every collapse, Haiti rebuilds itself. In every imposed silence, Haitians sing defiantly. Consider the story of Catherine Flaon, who legendarily sewed the first Haitian flag by tearing apart the French tricolor, a powerful symbolic act. Or Sanette Billard, a female officer in the Revolutionary Army who was captured by the French and executed, but faced death with a composure so fierce, even her enemies hesitated before pulling the trigger. Or today, think of Naomi Osaka, Wycliffe Chang, or Michael Zhang, international figures who trace their roots to Haiti and speak openly of its power and enduring pride. Because Haiti is not just a country, it is a living symbol. A constant reminder that the powerless are never truly powerless, that even in chains, a nation can be born. That liberty is not a gift handed down from above. It's a fight,